Okay. So last week we talked about relationships and how to repair relationships when they go south. And what we seem to have agreed was that there's kind of only one cause for strife in a relationship, and therefore there's kind of really only one real solution. And the cause is always a cause of character flaw on one party or both parties. There's the reason for relationship breakdowns is always because of character flaw. Now, sometimes someone might have a character flaw that won't come to the surface for whatever reason, but a certain scenario, a certain circumstance would actually, be a cause for the surfacing of that characteristic, which will bring up that will awaken that character trait and will be a cause for strife and for the unraveling of a relationship. And it's really important, I think, like we mentioned last week, to make sure that when problems happen in a relationship, to stop them before they develop into more than just a small problem. Like the idea of momentum, of trends, that when a relationship is going well, like there's positive momentum and things just get better and better. That's kind of the way it is. And each member of the unit, each unit of the relationship kind of goes out of the way, and it has a positive vibe. There's a positive atmosphere, and things kind of get better. As opposed to, unfortunately, if it were to head south, it's kind of the same thing. It kind of has a way of progressing, of increasing momentum, of negative momentum. That's why it's kind of important to know, to try to find what the root causes of strife is, and try to address that heads on. So what we said last week was that the root cause for relationship fails is going to be that of a character flaw. Someone has a character trait that is just a cause for them to to not get along, to get into a fight, however you want to describe the downward trend of a relationship. So today, what I want to do is try to think of how do you address your own personal character flaws in order to become a better person, become a more likable person, become a friendlier person, become a person that people want to admire, people want to be around you more and more, and just to have a more positive outlook on life, but also in light of this realization that this is really the cause for the relationship, all the relationships we have in life. It's going to be a reflection of our own character. Therefore, it's also important for the relationships we have with other people to have good character. So what I'm going to try to do tonight is this is obviously a monumental discussion. The whole idea of character perfection, how to become a better person, how to address your own flaws, is an enormous subject. What I'm going to try to do is to give maybe a few pointers, but kind of the general picture of the process. Like I called it in my invite, was the alchemy. I love that word. Alchemy. Is there a better word in the English language? Alchemy. Right? We're taking something and transforming it. Right? The transformation, the change of a person from having one character trait to having a different one, from being stubborn to being a little more flexible, from being angry to being a little bit more, more mellow, from being a little bit stingy, a little bit self-centered to being a little more of a kind person. That change. How do we go about having that transformation within ourselves? I also like to think of it as in the usage of the term alchemy, because alchemy was typically this ancient myth of turning things into gold. It's if you somehow knew how to turn regular everyday items or lead into gold, you kind of would be you probably would have it made. It's such a valuable skill, and the ramifications are so enormous. And I kind of think that character perfection is kind of the same thing. We all have our share of lead, our share of unremarkable aspects to our character, And there is a way, or maybe there is a way, to turn that into gold, to turn it into something really admirable, something that we could be really proud of, and something that would make us better people and better suited for social interactions, with others. So I wanted to talk maybe about the Torah portion, which I think is the starting point for this discussion. You have at the end of Genesis, you have Jacob's old, right? Jacob and his whole family, they end up in Egypt, right? Everyone's familiar with the story. Joseph becomes sort of like the prime minister, or the vice prime minister, or the viceroy, it's called, and his whole family follows him down to Egypt, and they're there for a bunch of years. And Jacob is the patriarch, and he has all his kids, and he's getting old. He's about to die, so he calls over his kids and says, "I'm giving you all a blessing." Right? And all his kids, his 12 sons, they gather around, and he starts going individually, one by one. Right, starting from the oldest. Reuven was the oldest, then Shimon, then Levi, then Yehuda. And if you take a look if you examine what he tells his kids, it's very, very peculiar that he were to call this a blessing. Right? He calls in his oldest kid. What does he say? I'm going to give you a blessing before I die. I'm going to give you my best wishes to you. I'm having you should have a productive life. I want to wish upon you good things before I kick the can. And what does he tell him? And I'll read it to you in English. Reuven, you are my firstborn. You're the oldest one. My strength and my initial vigor. Foremost in rank and foremost in power. Water like impetuosity. I can't even pronounce that. It means like impetus. It means your impetus was like water-like. You cannot be foremost because you mounted your father's bed and then you desecrated him who ascended my couch. Okay, let me translate this into regular English. He says, Reuven, you were the oldest. You were the one who's supposed to be the Kohen. You were the one who's supposed to be the king. You were the oldest in the family. You were the one who had the first dibs at leadership, at monarchy. But you lost it. Right? Why did you lose it? Because you make decisions very hastily, like water. You automatically make decisions. And he references a few situations in Reuven's life where he made the decisions hastily, and therefore he tells them, therefore you're not getting it. You're not going to be the king. And you're not going to be the Kohen, the priest. That's it. And we're done with Reuven. Does that seem like a blessing to you? Right? Your dad is, the head of the company. Or your dad is King Abdallah. Right? The head of a monarchy. And he calls you in and says, I'm going to give you a blessing. You know what the blessing is? You're not going to be the one to run the company. You're not going to be the one to be the next king. Even though really you're the oldest and really, ideally you should deserve it. Seems very strange that the Torah called this a blessing. Fair question? Okay, let's move on to the next kids. Shimon and Levi. So the second and third kid get lumped together. Shimon and Levi are comrades. Their weaponry is a stolen craft. Into their conspiracy may my soul not enter. With their congregation do not join. O my honor, for in their rage they murdered people, and at their whim they hamstrung an ox. Accursed is their rage, for it is intense, and their wrath, for it is harsh. I will separate them within Jacob, and I will disperse them within Israel. Even in fancy English language, it does not sound like a blessing, right? What's he telling them? He says, Shimon and Levi, you guys have anger issues, right? And we know a few sections earlier, there was the story with Dinah. And Dinah was Dinah is their sister, and she was raped by a fellow by the name of Shechem. And Shimon and Levi got so angry that they slaughtered the whole town that this guy Shechem was from. And now, years and years later, right? They were teenagers then. Years later, their father says, "Okay, you guys have anger issues. You guys have rage issues. You destroyed a whole nation." Or a whole city. We don't know how big that city was. You hamstrung an ox as a reference to what they did to Joseph. Therefore, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to separate you guys, and I'm going to disperse you. What does that mean? It means that the job that your descendants will have to be, you're going to have to be like traveling salesmen, peddlers. You're always going to be in the move. That's what he tells them. Yes.
Does that guess basically the priestly family, they had no land. They were dispersed around into the various cities.
Exactly.
Shimon, I can't make a connection on that.
Oh, well, what it says is that Shimon, they were like the traveling teachers. They were teachers.
Shimon as well?
Yeah. Well, Shimon, they had a land, but their, so to speak, their the occupation that the members of Shimon was, they were always traveling. They were never united. Also, seems like a very strange blessing to give someone. And well, then it goes on to the rest of the kids, but it ends after it goes through all the kids, and it says it recaps. And this was the blessing that the father gave to his kids. Now, so there's a major question here: how is it possible to call what Jacob told his first three sons a blessing? Right? He told them their character flaws, and then he punished them. He said, "You're not going to be a king. You're not going to be the priest. You're not going to be able to be united, or you're not going to live in one location. You're always going to be traveling," which seems like that's not less than ideal. How could this be construed as a blessing? So my late grandfather, who's right over here, Gramps. So he was a tremendous Torah scholar and teacher. And he said, I learned from him this idea. What did he say? The idea of character, the idea of inborn traits that we have, right? These are the guiding lights to us as to what we're supposed to do in life. Each one of us is born innately, physiologically, with a certain collection, a certain repertoire of good and bad characteristics. And you know what? You see it with kids. Some kids are very prone to doing some, to being angry or to being wild, and other ones are more calm. Some kids will never tell a lie, even if it means that they're going to get in trouble. And they are innately driven towards being truthful. Some kids are, always share. One of my kids loves to share. Loves to share. And he'll have a dispute with someone else and say, okay, he'll give in, he'll always share, and then he'll be sad about it, but he'll share. And the other one won't share with anyone. Two of my boys, right? One of them will share with anyone, right? Always give in, always sharing, and he'll be sad about it, but he'll do it anyhow. And the other one won't. It's very curious. Same parents, right? But it means that the way humans are wired is that they're prone towards certain character and certain character traits, and that's from day one. And those character traits are the guiding lights that we're supposed to have in life. The problem is that most of us don't know what really drives us. It's very hard to think inwardly. We're used to seeing the world from in out, like in outward. All our senses are directed towards the external. Okay? How often do we sit by ourselves without a phone and think about ourselves? Very infrequently. And therefore, we have a major problem. If our character is designed in a way that to sort of guide us as to what we're supposed to do in life, we have a problem. We don't know what our character is. Now, in that light, I think this explains my grandfather. It's very easy to understand how Jacob was telling them a blessing. Jacob was saying, Reuven, right? Oh, my oldest son, right? You did a few things, or I know you're my kid. It's easier for a parent to see the true nature of their child. I know that you have the character or the negative character to be very hasty and to make decisions without thinking them through. You're like water, always making decisions, and therefore you're prone to making mistakes. Now, ideally, or the way you're the firstborn, and really you deserve to be the king, and you deserve to be the priest. Problem is that I know that you're hasty, and I know that you don't take time to think before you make a decision. You make bang decisions, knee-jerk reactions. If you were to be the king, and there's some sort of cause for you to make a major decision, you might very hastily make a decision, make the wrong decision. And it'll be a terrible thing for you and for the whole Jewish people, for the whole family. If you're the leader, right? So think about what can happen. Think about the travesty that would happen. Today's geopolitical situation, right? There's very complex issues facing the world community. And, decisions have to be weighed very, very seriously, with much deliberation before you make those decisions. If you have a bunch of people making decisions like that, think about the Cold War. Imagine if everyone was just trigger happy. Think about what would have happened, right? Ruvain, this is your character. This is the way you are, right? I know. I want to prevent you from heading through life, or living your life in a way that exposes your character, and in a negative way. Therefore, there's no greater blessing than to tell Ruvain that you lost out your kingship and you lost out the priesthood. The priesthood is also it's a very complex. What the priest needs to do in the temple is very complex, and if he doesn't, if he does decisions, off the cuff, right, shooting from the hip, what can happen? He can mess up the service in the temple. Terrible thing. So what his dad is saying, this is no greater blessing. Number one, he gives him an accounting of his character. And number two, he sets up in his life in a way that his character won't run afoul with the path of life that he chose. Similarly, we have Shimon and Levi. What did Shimon and Levi do? So what has to start off? Shimon and Levi, the second and third boy, they're comrades. They're a team, right? What happened? Two stories. Someone started up with their sister. Someone raped their sister, right? And they destroyed a whole town. They have anger. They have family unity, family pride, right? And they use it in a very violent way. Think of Sonny Corleone. I'm sure everyone here has seen The Godfather. Has everyone here seen The Godfather? Has anyone here not seen The Godfather?
But I know no one else references it.
You jumped to my house. You don't offer friendship. You don't offer love. I don't know what he says. You don't invite me to your house and offer a cup of coffee. You jumped to my house on the day of my daughter's wedding and you asked me to commit murder. Oh, not bad. Not bad. Okay. Not bad for a rabbi. Okay. Okay, I apologize for that. But Sonny Corleone is someone that if you mess with his sister, right?
This is your whole town.
He'll destroy you. He has such a tremendous anger, right? So, and Shimon and Levi, they had that, but they were a team. To them, like family pride, just when these two people were together and they had the idea of family pride, they went nuts. They started slaughtering entire towns. So this is a toxic relationship. Shimon and Levi, they have a character that when someone starts up with their family, it just drives them crazy, right? And when there is a mob as in riot, means when they're there together, when they're united, it can have very, very dangerous repercussions if something were to happen to their pride. Therefore, what does Jacob say? I'm going to disperse them. Right? What does it help to disperse them? It helps that they won't be united during the time where their family pride, there's a swipe taken at the family pride, and therefore they won't, God forbid, go and act in a unwise fashion and do something that they might regret. So too we could see that Shimon and Levi indeed got a great blessing from the Father, that he revealed to them their negative character, and also provided them a way that they could live their life in a way with that their life won't clash or won't expose their negative character. Okay, so this is where I like to use it as a starting point. And I think that the real takeaway that I want to have from this is I think what I would call step one of the alchemy of self-transformation, or self-reinvention, and that is the awareness. If you don't know what is your character, what is the bag, what is the mixed bag that you got, the characteristics that you have innately, how do you even know where to start? How do you know what is it that you have that needs to be fixed? If you don't know what needs to be fixed, how could you possibly even begin to try to fix it? Fixing negative character is hard enough if you know what the negative character is. If you have no idea, if you're totally unaware of what it is that you're even trying to fix, how are you going to fix it?
It's like step one in most of those situations, know your problem.
Exactly.
Or admit you have a problem.
Well, right. Well, we're talking about people that they know they have a problem, right? And but they might not even know what it is. I mean, they're sincere about trying to fix their problem. Very sincere. We're talking about sincere people who want to. The people like us. We're sincere about trying to become better people, but we don't know where to start. So the first thing we need to do is figure out. We got to be aware of what it is we need to address.
And sometimes you go like people. They know they have a problem. Yes, they admit that they have a problem, but they just won't accept that it's actual problem, so it won't get fixed. So you might have that issue too.
Well, that is that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Cognitive. That's a good point. It means sometimes people have a hard time facing
the reality that there is they accept there is a problem. It's just they don't accept that they have to fix the problem.
No. Okay. So that's always. There's so many things that could trip up this process. You're absolutely correct. People like avoiding the subject because it makes them have to have a serious discussion with themselves. Mm-hmm. Ask themselves hard questions.
Well, I think the other thing is that it's so hard to see what's wrong with you because you can't be your own mirror. You need someone else oftentimes to point things out to, which means that you have to go to ask someone and say, what's going on? And then so you have to ask someone there, and the other person has to be honest with you. And nobody really wants to look all at you and say, you know what, you're really kind of a jerk at times. Even if it's true. There's not many people that really, are willing to be that honest. In most cases, yeah. So I think it's.
People don't really naturally want to affect their ego.
Yeah. But sometimes, somebody goes and good friends, we have an understanding. We will tell each other. If something's wrong, we tell each other, and we know it's coming from a good place. There's the mutual understanding it's coming from a good place. We're not trying to hurt, and it might hurt at first, but one and the other might have to after hearing the news, might have to just take a step back. Okay, that's a little offensive. Then let it digest and okay, and then come back.
I have no problem telling my friend to be an ass.
Yeah, mine.
Yeah, but remember that's a generality. We want to get to the specific.
Yeah. But
that's not such a helpful comment for him. He doesn't really know. Okay, fine. How do you fix that? Right? It's, that's more of a generality. Okay, but let's say he wants to stop being a jerk, right? It's too much of a generality. Someone once said that. They have those mirrors that make you look, those inverted mirrors, or those make you look really, really fat or really tall and thin. Someone said, I kind of was disturbed by this statement, but I think there might be some truth to it, so I'll say it also, even though it might be disturbing to you. And the person said is that, they're having a whole question as to why get married. This famous question was, why get married? Just to have kids? Well, you can have kids with anyone else, or is it to have right? It's a question that's kind of, everyone kind of has their own answer to that question. But he was saying that a wife, or obviously a spouse, a husband or a wife, is a mirror. What kind of mirror? A mirror that shows to you your flaws. I mean, a spouse is able to cut through all the noise. Someone who lives in such close proximity for so long, right, with another person, right, and they have the impartiality. They have the clear vision. Right? They're not blinded by they're not blinded. So therefore, they're able to see and they're able to know what the other person's flaws are.
But able to accept them too.
Huh?
They are able to accept them.
Right. That's true. We're not talking about acceptance of that. We're talking about finding out. Right. The only way to start addressing your own character is if you know what your own character is. So that's point number one. Question is now, point number two is, okay, how do we find out? So this guy wanted to argue is that the reason why we get married is as a venue to find out what your own character is. So that's why it's a little bit off-putting, I know. But the point is that it's much.
I don't think so. I think you get married and you end up finding it out. It's not the reason you get married, though.
Well, that's probably why it was off-putting.
But sometimes, I get to the argument, marrying someone to figure out, but, it also it can translate into having good friends that they see you for who you are, and they're there for you. They friends that become, family. Your family.
Yeah, but also some friends don't always see you, in your, your best of times and your worst of times.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, the friends that you've made into family.
Yeah, but they're not with you 24 hours a day.
I remember I was a few years ago.
Or a roommate. There you have.
I had a friend when I was still living in Israel. I had a friend. Actually, I emailed with him today. I haven't spoken to him in years, but and I remember something that he told me. We were taking a walk in Jerusalem. We were in yeshiva still, and he told me something, which is it was very harsh what he said. Not because he said it harshly, because I knew it was so true, and he exposed to me my own personal shortcoming, and I kind of really, really appreciate it, even though it's kind of painful. But it really is gold. Right? It's gold because it's information that's really hard to access yourself. But other people have much easier access to it. So he kind of took it and showed it to me. And while it's hard to face your own fault and to have it presented to you in such a way where it's so clear and it's so true, and you know that the person is right, but it really is valuable. And that's what he said. A good friend could really provide that service. But you have to be receptive of it.
I have some friends. It's you can't. Certain things are just off topic. You've already gone with them. They're going to tune you out no matter what. They know it's wrong, but they won't listen. They've kind of avoided the fact. And there's some friends. It's just all right. They know. They understand. Where if you say something, it's from the heart. They understand the fact that you're coming from the heart, and so coming from the heart, they take a moment. Sometimes it might just sting a little. And they might need a moment to back off.
But that's what a real friend
back.
is.
Yeah.
And that's what a real friend is.
To let it digest.
Now, in the third section of my grandfather's book, one of my grandfather's books, is actually on my bookshelf here. He has an entire section, 70, 80, 90 pages, describing in great detail the Jewish, or more specifically, the Musar philosophy of self-knowledge. Just idea, self-awareness, how to get a catalog of your own qualities. And it's literally 70 pages, and it's describing in minute detail exactly a whole formula of how to actually do it. But people spend years. I know people who spend years on that section just to figure out the answer to this question: self-awareness. One of the things that he writes is you have to take a diary and spend 2 months and try to ask yourself, okay, today, after you finish the day, ask yourself, okay, which characteristics did I exhibit today? And try to make a list. Try to say, okay, fine, with this interaction, what was driving that? What's really behind my activities? But the point is that it's very hard to get a picture of your character, your general character. I think that in a case where there was a relationship that went sour, or there was some sort of fight or something going on, then it might be easier because you say, okay, I know this happened because of a character flaw. Is it my fault or is it the other person's fault? If it's my fault, okay, which aspect of my character? Am I being too lazy? Am I being too stubborn? Am I being inflexible? Am I being impatient? What is it? Right? It's kind of in a weird way, a fight or something that went sour in a relationship can kind of be a blessing in disguise because it could expose you, to give you this awareness, which is the first step. So the first step has to be awareness. Like I said, we're doing it so briefly tonight, but I want to give a complete picture, so we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now you know what you have. You have anger. You could be. Some people have a penchant to not have mercy. What's it called? Not have mercy. To be not merciless. Well, I know.
Empathize?
No, to not empathize, but the kids who pull off the legs from the spiders. What's it called? Hebrew it's achzari, so sadistic, and it's a real thing. And there are people who like blood. They like seeing and that's a natural. People who like dealing with I always look to see the kids who look when a bris milah is happening. In the synagogue, and there's a brit milah, there's a circumcision. There's two kinds of kids. The kids are they're looking, or not kids, or even adults. People who have no problem with that. Always want to get involved, want to dissect the frog. Right? There's kids who want to dissect the frog, and there's kids who have nothing to do with the frog or the circumcision. Like myself, I get very, very queasy around blood. The closest I ever got to any circumcision was my own two boys, and it was way too close, and I wasn't that close. But whenever I'm always at the other end of the room, facing the other direction. It's hard for me to stomach it. But what the Talmud says, this is the next point. The Talmud says in try to take Shabbos 156 all the way at the end. It says someone who's born under the horoscope of Ma'adim. Ma'adim is Mars. That person is someone who's born with this certain characteristic of Mars, which is red, isn't have a penchant to be one who spills blood. And he could be one of four things. He could be either a thief murderer. He gets his fill via his murder. He could be a butcher, slicing open animals all the time. He could be a doctor, a surgeon, or he could be a mohel. The point is that someone who all these four people have the same character. The question is what you do with a character, where you channel it. Right? You can either channel it to bad things, right? Which someone's a murder is a terrible thing. You could channel it towards things which are, not here, not there. They're a butcher, right? It's an occupation. It's nice. You can make a livelihood out of it, and it's something where you get your fill of your blood fill out of that. Or you could do something which is a mitzvah, which is being a doctor, being a surgeon. And you could do something which is also, or even a greater mitzvah, and that's to be involved, to be someone who does circumcisions. And the lesson behind this one is that now you have a characteristic. Does it mean, is the only way to address a character flaw by eradicating it? No. It's not the only way to address it. Right? You might not be able to eradicate it, right? But the point is you could channel it. If someone, God forbid, like I said last week, the first rule that I got, the first rule of marriage was not to hit your wife, right? I said the last week. This big expert.
Not hit your wife?
That's what he said. This is the big expert. This is the first rule is don't beat your wife, which I found to be amusing. But God forbid if someone were to strike his wife, or it does exist, even though it's not as frequent, but the other way around, right? Which is a terrible thing, right? Someone can have a temper and have and just get angry and just start punching and swinging. Terrible, terrible thing.
Maybe they should be a boxer,
Or maybe they should be a boxer, or maybe they should have a punching bag. The point is that the way that they need to quench this desire to punch something. Okay, punch something, but don't punch your wife. Punch something, but don't punch your coworker or the neighbor, right? Punch the punching bag. Like I have one of my brothers. I have 6 brothers, but one of my brothers, when he was younger, especially, he had this energy, this passion. He would be a little wild. So what did my parents do? The parents bought him a punching bag, and when he would get angry, he would go into the basement and put on his gloves and punch the bag until he quenched that need. So some things are not going to change. Right? You have certain characteristics. You have inflexibility. You have anger. You have you have rage. You have haughtiness. Right? You have things that need to be filled, so to speak. Do it, but do it in a way that won't disrupt your life. Do it in a way that won't make you evil. Right? If you have a need, this is I shouldn't say that. But if you have a certain quota, a certain amount of units of a certain of anger, well, find a way to do it in a way that won't ruin your relationships.
Well, they actually just realized, I don't know, people are realizing that food is the most overutilized antidepressant, and exercise is the most underutilized antidepressant. So it's which probably contribute it's so obesity, but like people who eat to make themselves feel better than versus working out. So having that thought to me.
Right, but I wouldn't call being depressed or having tendency towards depression as a characteristic. I would say it's more like an overall psyche
or
thing.
Yeah, or I guess needing some type of comfort.
But I think anger is a good example.
Anger.
People who are angry people, right? They are innately angry, and they have needs to have their temper flare up every once in a while. Okay, if it's going to happen, let it at least happen in a way that it won't damage your relationships. Or exercise, right?
Yeah, get endorphins and be
exactly.
happy. But I realize when I'm angry, I get my best workouts. Sometimes when I'm pissed off, that's when I get my best workouts.
I want to say one more point before I recap, and that is, let's say someone really wants to fix. It means it's hard enough to get to know what you need to fix, right? And you want to actually fix it. It's not going to be easy, but there is a way to do it. This is the alchemy. There is a way to take a character trait and change it. And it's funny, we think of evolution as being an idea that's 150 years old. And it's actually interesting that you have in the 13th century a Jewish. Well, it actually happened something else. Freud. We credit Freud with discovering the unconscious, when in reality, in the written works of Rabbi Israel Salanter, 60 years earlier, he describes with absolute detail the unconscious, which is interesting. But he somehow doesn't get credit for it. But we actually have that book. We have the letters. And we have everything. But similarly, with regards to evolution, or the idea that organisms change and the reality changes and that's passed over towards succeeding generations, is actually found with regards to this topic in the book called Drushas Haran. It's the essays of the Ran. He lived in the 12th to 13th century. Rabbi Nissim, one of the great commentators on the Talmud, and he talks about these secretions. The 4 secretions within people, and he says is that there's a certain balance. There's the black, the white, the green, and the red, and the certain balance of these secretions, they determine that person's character. So if someone has lots and lots of red, they're very angry, and if someone has very little red, it means they're not so prone to anger. And when they get angry, it's very easy to appease them. Okay? As an example and he says, if someone works on their anger, right, that red secretion is going to diminish slowly. It's going to diminish, and then subsequent generations will have less. It will have less of of that secretion that would have had he not worked on it. And that's where the idea of evolution comes in. That same idea, organisms could change and would reproduce, a new sort of a new entity with a certain change. The difference is that it's not random; it's kind of guided. But I know families. My kids are quite rambunctious. They are, and from what I heard, I was also a rambunctious child, and that's kind of a theme that you see with a lot of families. You see families that everyone's quiet and timid and sweet, and they don't misbehave, they don't call out in school, and they don't ever need to be sent to the principal's office. You see those families, and those parents are also really nice, and really sweet, and really quiet, and everyone really likes them, and, well behaved, and their kids are like that. And we kind of do see a link, a link. What's it called? A heretical. Hereditary. I'm sorry, my brain's going a little crazy. We see a hereditary link between in character that is indeed true, and it should be no surprise when the parents are really nice and sweet and quiet and easygoing that the children are. Yeah, you see families, the whole families, everyone's just really nice, really sweet, really easygoing, very uncomplicated. And it's that because that's the way it is. The parents, their character is a real physiological entity that they have, and that will be passed on to the succeeding generations. And if you find a way to actually change your collection of character, that would pass on to the following generation. The question is, well, how do you change your character? And the answer to that is attrition. What does that mean? That means if you're a lazy person, you have to slowly chip away at that laziness. You have to every day do 2, 3, 4, 8, 10 things which are not lazy. And every time you go against your instinct, you're slightly weakening that instinct. And it's like the more workouts you do, the less workouts you miss, the easier it is for you to do it. The more times you wake up early in the morning, the easier it is for you to wake up in the morning. Right? That's the way it is, because you're slowly chipping away at that instinct.
Bring out another character flaw?
Well, it might, which way when it gets real tricky. Sometimes there's a trade-off. Yeah. That's where it gets very tricky.
And what if you get a worse character flaw than being lazy?
Huh?
What if you get a worse character flaw than being lazy?
Like I said, we're just trying to give the overview, but I agree. You're bringing up a point which is a very, what I say, profound point, Matthew. And that is that it's kind of possible that someone could really become a kind person and then become like an arrogant person. And it's like, look at me, look how kind I am. Look how generous I am. Which might you might be better off, to remain unkind and humble. But that's a good point. But I think we're getting too much into the minutia of the idea. I want to keep it to the basics, and I'm going to give a recap, which will show some semblance of a sequence of linear thought to everything I'm saying tonight. Sequence of linear thought, not bad. So yes, there is a way to change a character, and that is through attrition. Every time you do something which is out of character, which is different, right? You chip away at the flaw and you build the positive character, right? If you have anger, right, and every time you feel an impulse to anger, you bite your lip, you bite your tongue, you hold it in, right? It became easier next time, right? If every time you saw the chocolate bar and you said, oh gosh, I can't hold myself back, and you just said, okay, I'm not doing it, I'm acting up against it, or I'm doing it in 5 minutes, you're chipping away at it. Every time that you're lazy, you don't wake up in the morning, you want to just hit the snooze a few more times, right? And you say, no, I'm getting up. What you're doing is you're chipping away at your laziness, at your desire to just remain sedentary, right? Every time that I'm trying to think of another example. Every time that you're impatient, like you're waiting in line and you're in a rush, right? And you say, no, just calm down. It's okay. There's no reason to get upset. I'll be where I need to be, like 38 seconds later. It's not the end of the world. What you're doing is you're chipping away at your impatience and you're building your patience. That is, in a nutshell, how you actually change character.
Slowly but surely.
Huh? Slowly but surely. But if you do something 40 days in a row, right? Which is also an idea brought up in Jewish philosophy. You do something 40 days in a row, you acquire that trait. So if you're a lazy person and you have 40 days that you're not lazy, you rid yourself of that character. So I want to give a recap, and I think the recap is kind of important because I felt as I was speaking tonight that maybe it wasn't so clear the exact outline or the overview of what I wanted to say. And what I wanted to say is really 4 points. 4 points that I shared with you tonight. I'm going to organize them and make it transferable, something you can take with you, think about. Point number 1 is that what we're trying to do, the goal is to try to, we have character flaws and we want to fix them. We want to be able to have the most meaningful, fulfilling relationships in life. We want to be good people, right? And we want to figure out how do we address our character flaws. So like we said, character flaws are innate and they're very hard to spot. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how to become aware of our character. Right, and there's ways to do it, on an individual level. Be aware of an individual character flaw, and there's much more sophisticated way to get a complete catalog of all our character. That's obviously more difficult. Right, the point number 1 is we have to know what we're going up against. That's the only way to address it. Right, awareness. Point number 1. Now you know what it is that you need to do. There's 3 ways for you to address it. Number 1 is you avoid it, right? If you're hasty, if you make decisions on the fly, if you don't deliberate before you make a decision, you don't become a king. You avoid the conflict or situations that will bring you into the conflict of your character. So an example of this would be if you know that you have a hard time waking up in the morning, right? At the right time at 7 in the morning. Why? Because you're tired, because you were up the previous night watching Breaking Bad. Shout out there, Desmond. Right? Then what you do is what you do.
Everything.
So what you need to do is to make sure that you don't come into a situation where your laziness will flare up. Right? Don't stay up so late at night. So you won't have the problem in the morning. So try to live your life in a way that you're avoiding the problem. Try to avoid situations. You know what your Achilles heel is. Avoid it. Don't deliberately put yourself in situations where you know that your imperfection will flare up. That's the easiest way to do it.
Breaking Bad is not a good solution.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so that's number one.
You're going to watch it eventually later.
Awareness. You cannot.
You don't get angry.
Yeah, you can't. Okay, so point number one is awareness. But once you're aware, you can do 3 things. Either you could avoid it, and that's what we saw the example from Jacob. Way number 2 is to channel it. You have a character, a flaw, but it doesn't mean that it has to be bad. There's ways to have kosher. There's kosher outlets for your character flaw. Right? Get the punching bag, right? The example that the Talmud brings, which is the the guy who wants to have bloodshed. Become a mole, become a surgeon. Find a kosher outlet to your imperfection. Channel it towards good. Right? If you're an angry person, well, then write a blog against the Hezbollah. Right? Nice example. Right? Be angry against people who do bad. You can channel your anger towards a good cause. Right? That's the way number 2. So we have awareness, avoidance, channeling, and the last thing is actually changing, which is the most difficult, but it's the most comprehensive, and it's the safest bet, and that is to actually change your character. Right? And like we brought it from the run, you can actually make a physiological change in your character makeup. It's possible. And how do you do that? Via attrition. Do things which are counter your character. If you're a lazy person, do 5 things a day against your laziness. Do things which are against your character, and therefore you'll shift the tide, and eventually you'll acquire the positive character and rid yourself of the negative character.
Completely?
Well, like I said, it's completely. I don't know if completely. That's a good. That's again for that's another advanced question. Matthew, you always bring up advanced questions.
Enough to know how to handle it.
Well, to whatever degree, it is possible completely, but there's you might have to do some maintenance, but or you can do 98%, which is also pretty good. Like I said, you come out here, you have 4 words: awareness, perhaps the most difficult of the stages, and then you have 3 options. You want to just avoid it; it'll still be there. It'll still be there in full force. Hope to not come into a scenario that it will flare up. Channel it. Try to find kosher outlets for your character flaw, or try to change it. You might.
Try all 3.
Oh, you try all 3 exactly.
Various stages, just as your ability progresses, basically. You avoid it when you don't think you're capable of handling it. As you get stronger, then of course you try to channel it, and then as you progress, you work on changing it.
Absolutely, I agree. I was actually, before you said that, I was definitely thinking of saying that. So that's you took the words out of my mouth. So that's that. So I do think that you could work on multiple levels or multiple times. Absolutely. But I think that awareness, we think of it as just setting the stage. It's much more than that. The second you're aware of it, when you do that, a lightning bolt or a light bulb will go off, or a red flag will go off. You'll notice it. When you're aware of it, you'll notice it in your day-to-day interactions. So that's that. I think we have somewhat of a formula of how we could address our character flaws, and hopefully we will not suffer the fate of so many people who have unaddressed character issues, and it causes them so much pain in their life, and it's unfortunate. That's not, obviously, it's not the most glamorous of exercises. What are you doing now? Oh yeah, it's riveting. I'm actually coming up with ways to become less of an impatient person, right? That's what I'm doing. It doesn't seem glamorous, but it's very valuable. And, we'd be happier people if we have, less character shortcomings, and we'll be better people as individuals. We'll have better relationships. We'll have less strife in our life. All the good things. And thank you all for coming. And I hope I was not too much of a letdown with regards to the food tonight.
It was delicious.
It was good? Well, the soup was from Chaya, right? Huh?
I don't wake up tomorrow morning. I know.
God forbid. You'll wake up.
Yeah.
I said, the only thing that I made was the Beit Ziti.
Yeah, it was good. You've made it before, so.
I had made it before. Last time I messed it up, I think.